Hey, the listening tube welcomes a guest.
I'm Bob Woodley from the Listening Tube. My guest today is Chase Russell, a political strategist based in Florida. So, are all of his clients Republican? I'll ask him. We'll also talk about the definition of liberal and conservative and how liberals outdo conservatives when it comes to organization and enthusiasm. His book, Winning Without Millions, might have some solutions for the conservatives. Let's find out. You've started a company called Gray Eagle Strategies to help candidates win and, as you put it, lead with integrity. Well, hey, I think all candidates who lead with integrity should win. But my question for you is, do you advise any candidate? Is it just conservatives? Is it just liberals? Is it independents, Democrats, progressives, socialists? How does that work?
Yeah, no, we primarily focus on Republican candidates. We run a lot of nonpartisan races as well, commission, mayoral races, school board, stuff along the lines of that. Gray Eagle Strategies as a whole, though, is a conservative Republican consulting company. So we focus on, especially being here in Florida, predominantly a very red state. So business typically on that end is good on the conservative side.
What criteria do you use for when deciding who to work with?
We have a very detailed onboarding process. So a lot of the times it's typically starting out with me on a call with them. I gauge just kind of who they are as a person. I like to see it. The whole point of Gray Eagle is to get principled people in office, people that are going to do what they say they're going to do when they get there. And a lot of the times people have this issue in politics where, people get elected and they change the next day. I don't like that. I don't like seeing that. So we have a very detailed onboarding process. And I like to tell all of my candidates from day one, you and I are going to be best friends by the end of this. So I get to know them. I get to know their family, their spouse, their kids, in over a course of a few weeks on the onboarding process, just gauging if they're actually, what's their character like. And that's really, I mean, outside of just having the money or outside of having the networks, I want to know who they are as a person.
We've seen some of that. I call it bait and switch kind of politics. A good example of it would be Abigail Spanberger from Virginia, I think, in my opinion. Do you see that often on the conservative side?
I think that happens in politics, though. I don't think that's a partisan issue. I think that's a human nature issue for sure. I'll do anything to get some power. And that's what I kind of try and take out of this. Again, I go back to I want somebody with character, whether you're a demo, D next to your name and R next to your name. I think no matter like servant to the people, you should do what you say you're gonna do. Um, I, in my opinion, I don't see it as much on the conservative side, but again, I don't work on the other side as well, so I don't have an in-depth knowledge on that side of things. I can tell you that most of the candidates that I work with come in with a very good character. When they get elected, they do great things. I don't have too many times where that come back and I go, ah, that was a bad decision, and that's possibly due to my very long onboarding process. That's it's very detailed.
Now, you've also started an entity called Right Reach, which is, excuse me, to give conservative campaigns the modern outreach tools they need to compete. How is Right Reach different from Gray Eagle strategies?
So Right Reach focuses more on social media side of things, so influencer campaigns, getting people involved in the political spectrum. Um, what I've noticed when we started Right Reach, I noticed that conservatives, Republicans, that they're not very savvy when it comes to the new age of information. There's a lot of people on social media that have a great platform. Maybe they've got two, three, four, even up to 50,000 followers that are really wanting to get their voice heard about particular candidates or even causes. Here in Florida, the environment's a big cause. There's a lot of environmental influencers, and what Right Reach does is basically bridges that gap between campaigns and influencers and people that are pretty social media savvy that are looking to get involved in politics. So the main point with that was how can we get a next generation of people who are very adamant about a cause or a position? How can they use their voice to help promote that cause?
Right reach, as opposed to Gray Eagle strategies, is it reserved exclusively for conservative candidates?
Yeah, so we hyper focus on conservative candidacy. Same thing as Gray Eagle strategies. From a personal standpoint, I'm a Christian conservative. I'm a Republican, and I like working with people that have the same values as me. Now, I've met hundreds of candidates that are Democrats. They're more of the traditional Democrats, and I agree with some of their positions on a lot of things. However, they're typically running for some type of nonpartisan race and they're just happen to be registered Democrats. So I wouldn't disagree with working with some of them if as long as their interests are in the best interest of the community and their character is still the same.
So I guess my next logical question then would be, are there secrets or tactics that you would share with conservatives that you wouldn't share with liberals?
If I take you on as a client, you're my client, regardless of an R or D. Now, in a partisan race, I wouldn't take on a Democrat. Nonpartisan, I would work with Democrats. But as far as secrets, as trade secrets go, there's not really too much outside the norm. I mean, there's certain tips and tricks that I've learned over the years, but to answer your question directly, no. If you come on as a client of mine, my entire job is to make sure that you win, that you get in office, and you do what you say you're going to do, and I'm going to do that by all means necessary.
Now, you just said you were a Christian conservative, you're self-proclaimed conservative, and you also mentioned in the same breath that you sometimes agree with the positions of certain Democrats, usually mainstream Democrat or
Hmm.
liberal.
Yeah.
But my question then is, the term conservative just too broad? Is the term liberal too broad? How do you define conservatism?
Yeah, a lot of people will look at conservatism and they'll be like, well, they're right-wing nut jobs or they're this, that, and the other. I think what's great about my position and what's great about what I do is you really get to see a full spectrum of what people believe. And I think if people got to see the 30,000 foot view of politics, they would start to realize that Americans got a lot more in common, whether you're a staunch liberal or you're a staunch conservative, you've got a lot more in common than you think. And I think bringing back to the fact that we're all Americans and we want principled people in office. I would agree that the term conservative or the term liberal is very it's a very general term. For instance, me personally with positions, I agree with a lot of positions on a more left-leaning situation with the environment. I think that it should be in everybody's best interest to be conservative with the environment. We shouldn't be building AI data centers that are going to ruin water sources, which is traditionally a pretty liberal point of view. How that happened, I don't know. I don't know where the environment or the tree huggers turned to the liberal side of things when in reality, as humans, we should all be on that. But I think the overgeneralization of those terms is kind of misused. I think Americans as a whole need to realize that it's not about an R or a D. I think it's more so about getting the right person in office.
So then, is there a line between conservative and liberal? Or if not, where are the places that they cross over into each other?
Mm, I mean, there's a lot of places that they cross over as far as the movement goes. What I've seen over the years is that there's been a traditional Democrat that you can look at maybe Joe Rogan, for instance, and not to plug Joe Rogan at this, but he's a Democrat. He's always been a registered Democrat, but they've moved fairly far left with a lot of social issues that didn't make sense to him. But at the same time, too, they cross over at the sense of Democrats and Republicans both have spending problems. If you look at the national debt, people want to blame Democrats or they want to blame Republicans, and in the reality of it, it's both of them. So that's a large crossover when it comes to Democrats and Republicans on somebody that's fiscally responsible. That's one of the criteria when I look at a lot of candidates, and it's even in my book, is being fiscally responsible even from the start of your campaign. We need to start with $39 trillion in debt. We need to start looking at candidates that are like, hey, how do we cut this spending and stop taxing so many people? And that, again, that crosses party lines right there.
Because independent voters are now the largest block of voters, and for a conservative or a liberal to win, they have to get a lot of independent votes.
Mhm.
How do you do that?
Good messaging. It all boils down to good messaging. And good character. Again, I hate to keep harping on this one, but as a candidate, independent voters are independent thinkers. They're very, I love talking to independent voters, to be entirely honest with you, because it's such a wide range of like, okay, I believe this, I believe that, but at least they're cordial about it. To get independent voters, you have to be a principled candidate because they are going to do their research. Most independent voters, most MPAs, they're all they're not stuck on party lines. They're stuck on who's the better candidate and who's got the better messaging and the better policies. So to get those, you have to have a good policy. You have to understand whether it's a local race, what's happening in the community. You have to have a deep depth of understanding on what's happening, and how you plan to fix it. And that's really the key with getting independent voters.
Now, I'd like to back up to two things that we already touched on a little bit. One is with right reach,
Mhm.
talking about social media and things like that, and helping conservative candidates learn the ropes there and getting that message out. It does seem to me that liberal candidates have a much better grasp at not only social media, but also organizing. And I often wonder what's going on the conservative side of the aisle that they just don't seem to be able to organize in the same way that the liberals do. And I just can't help but wonder, are there only riots when Democrats are not in power because Republicans can't organize a riot?
Um, a lot of with right reach and even Gray Eagle strategies when we were starting to form these companies and stuff, we took an approach that correct, the conservative, the Republicans, they're not very good at moving into the new age of technology. The left is. Let's be really honest about it. The left is really good about organizing. They're really good about using mass media. They're really good about using social media and influencer campaigns to get the word out about certain movements or protests or whatever they may be doing at that time. And they rally behind that. So now the question becomes, how does the right do that? How does the right copy that same framework and actually start using social media to promote conservative causes for whatever it may be? And that's really the idea behind Right Reach. To answer your question on if there's riots, I think conservatives are more worried about putting food on the table. I think they're more worried. They don't have time to stand out in the hot sun, or nobody's paying them to stand out in the hot sun in order to hold a sign for whatever cause they may be. So that may, in my opinion, I think that's a lot more the case. Whereas Democrats will take that time to go stand out in the sun, and good for them. If they believe in that cause so much that they're willing to take their time to go do that, that's what America's about. Stand for your principles, stand for what you believe in, regardless if I believe in it or not. I still appreciate that they're taking their time to make their voice heard.
Do you think they still believe in it if they're just getting paid to be there?
I don't think so. I don't think, I think there's a time when you can be paid and still believe in the cause, but personally, I don't believe that's the case for most of them. I think they'll go wherever their check comes from.
Certainly, social media is a very powerful tool for a candidate. You can reach people, you can target certain types of people. Are you aware, or do you even think about the fact that AM and FM radio is still America's number one mass reach medium?
So the way they do that statistics with AM FM radio is, if I don't know off the top of my head the exact statistics on this, but the way they're doing it is they also do streaming within those statistics. I don't think there's enough studies that have been done on social media reach yet. I can tell you right now, just from the campaign over the past, if this was 5 years ago, I'd say, yeah, we should be doing radio ads. It's the right reach. It's this, that, and the other. That's completely changed over the past 5 years. I think radio, FM radio, AM radio is really died down. I think depending on who you're targeting too. Let's say here in Florida, there's a lot of communities with an older voting block, 65 plus. They typically still use FM AM radio. So it really depends on who you're targeting if you're going to be using that or not. But I am a firm believer that social media, as of at least the past 3 to 4 years, is the best bang for your buck when it comes to actually reaching people.
Now, getting back to the topic of fiscal responsibility, I recently read that a candidate for office in California spent $17,000 to file all the necessary paperwork to declare his candidacy. $17,000 just to get your name on the ballot is what he said he had to spend. How is that financial barrier a liability when it comes to bringing the best people with the best ideas to serve the citizens?
That's something people don't really talk about too much, and I'm glad you asked that question. The filing fees alone. There's two options when you run for candidacy: is you can raise the petitions, but you also have to pay to get the petition certified. It's very depending on the race here in the state of Florida for Congress. It's 2,500 petitions you have to raise right now, but that's only because of the redistricting. Most of the time, you're close to 5 to 6,000 people petitions you have to raise before qualifying. In June is typically when it happens, in the middle of June. So that's one way to qualify to be on the ballot. The second way is to pay a fee. For Congress here in Florida, it's a $10,000 fee just to get on the ballot. So what that does, in my mind, what that does is it creates almost kind of a class system. It's extremely difficult to get petitions. I've done it with many candidates. It is a walking out in the sun and just nonstop getting petitions, which takes away from fundraising, which takes away from actually talking to voters and going to meetings, stuff along the lines of that. But that's what I personally believe is the establishment's way of saying, hey, unless you have a couple $1 million in the bank and 10 grand's a drop in the bucket for you, you have to do petitions, which takes away from your candidacy and campaign. So yeah, it's fiscally irresponsible to even get on the ballot, and I think it deters a lot of really good candidates that don't want to just drop 10,000, 12,000, $20,000 to get on the ballot.
The listening tube will return at the speed of sound. Send email to thelisteningtube@outlook.com.
You've written a book called Winning Without Millions.
Mhm.
So is there a solution in there somewhere for that, or tell me about the book?
So within the book, I give quite a few steps. I give a lot of steps that we use here at Gray Eagle Strategies on things that are extremely impactful, how to get your messaging out, how to be a great candidate. A lot of the times when I sit down with a candidate, maybe as a first time candidate that they don't know, they have great ideas, they're really invested in their community, but they don't know where to even start on their campaign, and they don't have $2.5 million sitting in the bank like other candidates do. But how can you run a campaign as effective, if not more effective, than the person that has $2.5 million sitting in the bank? With that being said, there's a lot of information in the book that gives you a step by step on how to do it. And it's definitely it's if you're a first time candidate or political operative, I highly recommend getting a copy of the book. And there's a lot of stuff that leverages social media, free press, a lot of just really cheaper ways that you could be building name recognition and promoting yourself. And there's a few tips in there that we've used recently that it's a very new way of doing things, I'll tell you that.
Well, certainly we're going to need new ways of doing things. A lot of the old ways have become obsolete. So could you maybe give us a couple of examples on some of the new things, or even better, what old things have the new things replaced?
The main thing really is what you see right now is candidates. If you talk to almost any consultant, they'll tell you right off the bat, you need $1 million before you even start to run. And I don't subscribe to that narrative. I don't think that should be true because now you're bringing money into politics. And if you really look at the overall view of this, putting money into politics is really what's gotten us where we're at. So the entire point behind this book is to get money out of politics. With that being said, tips and tricks, you'll have to get the book to get all the tips and tricks, but one of them right off the bat is, leveraging social media video. Video is key on social media. Being authentic in the video. A lot of the times people will say, hey, we need to shoot a $10,000 commercial, and that's just not needed. Statistically, videos that are very authentic perform even better. And you've seen this with Spencer Pratt out in California. Very, very savvy when it comes to social media video. His video statistically on just authentic holding your cell phone in front of you is done 10 times better than the 40, $50,000 video that got put on by Karen Bass. That's really what it boils down to is authenticity of it.
Well, unfortunately for Spencer Pratt, it looks like the tide is turning against him in California right now, and he may be left out in the cold among the top two for the general election in November. It looks like it'll be now between two Democrats.
Regardless, and this is what I tell people too, regardless if it's a win or a lose, is the campaign strategy good? Was it a good campaign? What can you learn from even a loss? And I go over this a little bit in the book too, because obviously I've ran campaigns that have lost, and it was a great campaign, a great candidate. So why did they lose? And it's just like Edison with the light bulb. I found 10,000 ways not to build a light bulb. You could still learn from the losses and take new things into the next election cycle. So whether Spencer Pratt, is one example, whether he wins or loses, I think there's a lot to be learned from that campaign period.
That's a good analogy. In fact, I read somewhere that Edison actually even tried human hair as a filament in a light bulb. Of course, didn't work and probably didn't smell very good either. But
Could you imagine if we had a bunch of light bulbs with human hair in it everywhere? People would be
no,
selling their hair for good money.
no, certainly financial pressures can be a detriment to potential candidates. But there's also the intense scrutiny that comes with declaring your candidacy. Senate candidate in Maine is currently getting put through the ringer for some of his exploits, and perhaps deservedly so. But how
Mhm.
do people with perhaps one or two skeletons in their closet overcome their past when they want to serve in their local, state, or federal government and serve the people?
It's being honest. I mean, it goes back to having good character, being a principled person. If you've got skeletons in your closet, and I tell this to all my candidates that I have a consultation with, it's going to come out. You might as well be upfront about it. You might as well get in front of it and say, "Hey, this is what happened. This is what I did to correct the action." It's no different than just about anything in life, really. Be true to yourself, be true to what happened, what you did, own up to it, and move forward. People can forgive you for making a mistake. They're not going to get forgive you for lying about the mistake. So my advice to them is always, hey, if it happened, it happened. Let's get out in front of it and let's be honest and truthful. Now, if you go out and you say it happened and you're not honest about what happened, again, that's also going to come out. People in the day of the internet age where you have a digital footprint and everything you've ever done is online, you have no other options but to be honest or you're going to get found out. And then your campaign is tanked from that point.
Well, I think ever since probably the Watergate scandal, and it seems to be very prevalent in politics, it seems like there people always try to cover up things, and the cover up is often worse than the initial transgression to begin with. So why does it seem to be so hard for people to learn that lesson?
Pride, I think it boils down to pride, or they think they can get away with it. Yeah, since the Watergate scandal and everything, the statistically, and this is in the book too. We did a lot of research on this when we were writing the book. Statistically, trust in the government and trust in politicians and campaigns has went down drastically. It's almost completely reversed since the 60s. And when you're open and honest about something that happened, even if it's negative towards you, you've now built that trust factor. You've now made a connection. For instance, if I go to somebody and I'm trying to, a car salesman, and they lie about the car, and I know that they're lying about the car, I'm not buying the car. But if I go to the car salesman and he's instantly honest with me about it, I'm still probably going to be like, okay, let's figure this out. It's the same thing. You're selling yourself as a person. You are the product as a campaign or as a candidate. So, be honest about it, and build that trust factor right off the bat. I still to this day can't figure out why people lie when they know it's going to get found out. Every election cycle, there are scandals and everything getting brought out. Just be open and upfront from the get-go.
Do you think that'll happen to Graham Plattner?
I don't know. Um, I try not to hyper focus on too many specific races. There's a few that I follow pretty closely, but I don't know. We'll see. I think we'll see. I'll leave it at that.
Now, we have already established that the Democrats or the liberals, the left, seem to be much better at organizing than the right. They, from my perspective anyway, also seem to be much better at messaging. And you said messaging is very important, but I hear messages and people immediately grab onto them, these messages from the left, like trans rights are human rights, or we got to save democracy, which are both kind of very abstract things, but people grab onto them and hold on to them and live by them. They have these crazy ideas like student loan forgiveness and sex change operations for kids. And they somehow get people to jump on the bandwagons of these losing issues.
Hmm.
Why does it seem like Republicans can't generate the same kind of enthusiasm for popular issues? These are 80-20 issues and 90-10 issues, and yet it's the 20 or the 10 that seems to get the most attention and the most traction.
I think what you see with the left and some of their, I will say it, outlandish and just completely irradical, completely insane ideas. It's never going to come to fruition. They know that, but it rallies the troops, which is, again, from a strategy standpoint, I don't believe in it in any way possible, but from a strategy standpoint, it's fantastic. And what they do is they want to be the loudest wheel, so they get the oil. So what they do is they put out these random ideas that are going to get a very core group of people riled up. And those are the same people that will hold signs on a Saturday in the hot sun. And it creates this illusion that there is a lot of people that are following this. What the right now does is they react to it, which is not always a good thing when it comes to messaging, is reacting to it instead of just creating your own cause. For instance, the Save Act, the Save Act that's going through right now. I think it's 87% of Americans agree with the Save Act. So that should be something that's non-negotiable. 87% of the United States wants the Save Act passed. And why Republicans aren't capitalizing on that more, I don't know. But those are the issues that get drowned out by the very select few on the left that want to chant to make pedophilia okay or some crazy idea that makes no sense. So that's my take on it. I can't tell you exactly why the right doesn't hit on those core issues that are the 87%. But then again, you look at it too, whereas the left is very good at owning the media, the left is very good at using social media as a platform, and they're very good at buying views. A lot of the times they funnel, if you look at Virginia redistricting, they funneled close to $80 million, I think it was. Don't quote me on that number. It was close to $80 million and barely passed it. But when you put $80 million into something, you can do a lot with it. So if you're willing to burn that 80 million, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, ultimately that $80 million was wasted because a judge overturned the election results anyway and considered the resolution unconstitutional, which I think we can all agree it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's completely 80 million. And they don't, that's the thing too, is I've talked with a lot of these financiers that, fund the Act Blue and stuff like that. And they don't care. It's an imaging, it's a long-term imaging strategy and brand strategy. So even if they lose, it's still work towards the overall goal.
Well, what is that overall goal then?
Got opinions on it. I think the deconstruction of social norms. I think it's an anti. I believe it's very anti-American, and I believe if you look at New York, I think it's more of a socialist agenda than anything. I think the left wants to push very much towards socialism, or at least what they call democratic socialism. And you see this with the Gavin Newsom. You see this with them wanting supposedly AOC's polling really well for the president in 2028. I think that the Democratic Party, instead of pulling back more towards the middle and hitting their base voters, they're going to continue to go even further left by promoting people like AOC who are outspoken democratic socialists.
Do the Democrats, the mainstream Democrats, the traditional Democrats, need to maybe start their own party? Because it seems like the party has been taken over by socialists.
You could say the same thing about the right too, though. So I'm a firm believer in a three-party system. However, logically, it won't ever work. If you look at Joe Jorgensen, for instance, what was that back in 2020? She probably ran the best third-party campaign that I've seen in a long time. The Libertarian Party can't seem to rally behind anything. And then when you look at it from an RNC and DNC standpoint, the amount of support and money you would need to have a third party come up, and there would be so many laws changed. I wish there was a way for a third party. I've had this conversation quite a bit. I wish there was a way because that would force both parties to now start respectively looking at their candidates that they're putting up, and both parties to start looking at who they're funding, the things they're saying, the things that they're promoting. And I think in the interest of Americans in America, I think that would, it's capitalism at that point. You've got more options, so therefore everybody's got to look at their business plan and go, okay, how do we be better?
Then, if the socialists seem to be taking over the Democratic Party, and you said the right has the same problem, what faction of the Republican Party then is it that's breaking away?
I think you see right now the Republican Party, and this is just my opinion, but I think the Republican Party is moving more towards less. It's not like the left, it's not like the Democratic Party where they're completely divided on ideology. I think that they're divided on an establishment versus non-establishment. So you've got your candidates that are entrenched in the Republican Party, that they will win every election. They're backed by President Trump. And then you've got the Thomas Macy's of the world, the Marjorie Taylor Greens. So I think that's where you see the divide. And I don't think the divide is as far as the Democratic Party is, but I do see a rift when I look at a lot of Republicans when it comes down to that. I think it's more of a MAGA establishment Republican candidacy versus America First and Thomas Macy and Marjorie Taylor Greene candidacy.
All right, Chase, now where can people go who want to learn more about what you do and how you can help them?
Yeah, so you can go over to grayeaglestrategies.com if you're looking to run for something and you want to get a consultation. We predominantly work here in Florida. We do a lot of congressional races here in the state of Florida and all over the Southeast. But if you're looking to order the book, if you're looking to get in contact with me, you can go to chaserusselofficial.com. It's got all my contact information. You can subscribe to my Substack. I'm posting out email newsletters every day on the latest politics from the insider point of view. And yeah, you can get a copy of my book over there as well. It's pre-sale. It's coming out in August.
All right, we have a couple minutes left. Is there anything that I did not ask you about that you'd just like to share with us?
No, I think the idea of a third party, I love having that conversation. I know it's probably never going to come true, but I think it would be a nice thing for Americans to really look at it and go, okay, I want principal candidates, and I might not agree with everything on the right. There's a lot of independents now. I might not agree with everything on the left, but if there was a third party, what would that look like? I love running the numbers on that. So I appreciate you asking that question, and I really do appreciate you having me on.
Many thanks to Chase Russell for spending time with you and me in the listening tube. I hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation. don't forget to see chaserusselofficial.com to order the book and subscribe to his newsletter. Remember to follow The Listening Tube at thelisteningtube.com and find The Listening Tube's This Week in History and Not the Headlines. Thank you for putting your ear to The Listening Tube. I'm your host, Bob Woodley, for Thou ad infinitum.